Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Kurt Weill's Aufstieg und Fall der Stadt Mahagonny, which was shown at the Staatsoper im Schillertheater. The conductor was Wayne Marshall. The production was done by Vincent Boussard. The set design was done by Vincent Lemaire. The costumes were done by Christian Lacroix. The lights were handled by Guido Levi. The choreography was done by Helga Letonia. The videography was handled by Isabel Robson. The chorus master was Frank Flade. And the dramaturgy was handled by Katharina Winkler. Now, this is a very special evening for me because I managed to get a free ticket from one of the performers, Evelin Novak, who was also portraying the role of Jenny in this production of Mahagonny. And we basically ended up being Facebook friends, and she left me a message on Facebook stating that there was one free ticket for this opera. And I said yes, and the rest was history. So I also ended up catching up with her in terms of the autograph signing, and I also got a couple of autograph pictures of not just Evelin Novak, but also that of Stephan Rugamer, who was also the Jim Mahoney of the evening. So this is one of the ever fabulous Evelin Novak, and this is the other one from Stephan Rugamer. And basically, Miss Novak also stated that she also saw my review of Rossini's Barber of Seville, and she especially liked the way that I said that her Berta was absolutely well received. And she thought it was very sweet of me to say that. So it was reason number one why this is a very special evening for opera. And I'm actually very happy to have met someone like Evelin Novak at that evening, and also Stephan Rugamer. Number two is this is also written by one of Germany's most important playwrights, Bertolt Brecht. Now, Bertolt Brecht is a very well-known German playwright and poet who specializes in plays that usually talk about the hypocrisy of mankind and how society views man and many other, like, what do you call this? Taboos of society. And basically, since I'm an acting student, we always talk about the likes of Bertolt Brecht and how he sees society and how his works influence a generation, and especially when it comes to actors and when it comes to philosophers and even that of moralists. So basically, his works have a huge impact on the world, and not just in terms of German theaters, and not just in terms of like what makes like German theater very interesting. And this is what really makes it a very interesting opera for me. Not to mention, Brecht was also very well known for other works, not just Mahagonny, but also the likes of the Three Penny Opera. Another really well known work, and one that has also been well received by not only German audiences, but also that of international audiences as well. So, with that interesting bit of trivia out of the way, let's get on with the review. What did I think about the production of this opera? Well, I never really saw Mahagonny live, and this is actually my first time. The only experience that I had with Mahagonny are basically reading the synopsis and watching one clip on YouTube with Astrid Varnay as Widow Begbick. Now, this was at the Metropolitan Opera House. I think it's deleted, I guess, but I'm not so sure. So yeah, it was my only experience with Mahagonny, and I also saw a clip of Teresa Strada singing Jenny, and I really liked her performance of that. Now, with this production, it was very minimalist in its approach, and it basically made great use of the imagery of what we would usually expect from a huge city like Mahagonny. Now, as I understand, it's kind of inspired by US cities like Chicago, New York, and usually the ones that contains a lot of buildings. And it really invokes that feeling that you really are in a big city where it's so full of smoke and fog and basically smog all over. And it really has that type of minimalist feeling, and it's all dark all around. But I also like the way of how they use the moon, and it changes in a lot of like forms. In one form, it has like a face of an old man. The next form, everything goes like infrared, and in the next form, it's green, sort of to heighten the situation that each of the characters go through. Not to mention, it is all dark. Now, I guess this is to basically like state that this is not really a happy, happy, joy, joy story, but it didn't really have to be so obvious with it. I felt like it kind of, showed it too much in terms of its dark atmosphere. But still, I did like how they used that minimalist approach, and the costumes, for the most part, were actually well done. I think the ones that felt outlandish for me were basically the prostitutes' costumes, since, well, they had a lot of funny wigs, and it was bizarre, but in a very appealing kind of way. And I especially liked Jenny's white dress. Now, I thought that looked very gorgeous. So overall, a very minimalist production, and even though there were some outlandish costumes, I felt like it kind of worked in this production's favor rather than break it. And then we get to the singing. Now, let's start off with Leocadia Begbick, one of the leading women of this opera. Now, Widow Begbick is usually sung by a contralto or even a dramatic mezzo, or in some cases, a dramatic soprano who no longer has those high notes. And if you ask me, I usually prefer a contralto because I really like it when a contralto sings Widow Begbick because basically speaking, she has a lot of those low notes that she sings, and her range sits easily on the staff. It doesn't go like beyond the staff, nor does it go completely down. It just sits really well, which is also the reason why a lot of contraltos and dramatic mezzos flock to sing her. Whether it be the likes of Astrid Varnay, Anya Celia, and many other great contraltos, dramatic mezzos, and like dramatic sopranos late in their careers. And I especially like it when any like interpreter of Widow Begbick has also done the likes of Clytemnestra, Erda, Ulrika, Zia Principessa, and many other of those great contralto roles. And it was sung by the veteran Wagnerian soprano Gabriele Schnaut. Now, Gabriele Schnaut is a Wagnerian soprano you can either love with a passion or feel kind of iffy with. Now, iffy in terms of that she may not have a tone of voice that is so pleasing to the ear, that may not always be so well focused, but if you look beyond that, it has a very nice ring to it, and it has a lot of power and heft. At the same time, her dramatic presence on stage is actually quite riveting and equally as magnetic. And she's been very well known in the likes of Electra, Brunhilde, Ortrud, Venus, The Dyer's Wife, and many other big soprano parts. In fact, she did start out as a mezzo singing the likes of Octavian, Adriano, and Carmen, and even that of Dorabella, before starting to sing roles like Sieglinde and Venus, and then moving on to likes of Electra, Isolde, and Brunhilde. And hearing her as Widow Begbick, I thought she still had that solid tone in her voice that she was extremely well known for. And she also had a very magnetic stage presence. She didn't really go over the top with Widow Begbick, but she really kept her like playing her as a sort of like a sort of mature older woman compared to the younger men. And she really did a pretty good job as Widow Begbick. Granted, her voice doesn't sound as lustrous as usually expected from a lot of dramatic sopranos later in their careers, like Astrid Varnay and Martha Mörl. But still, her stage presence is absolutely magnetic. And it still remains magnetic to this very day, and I definitely enjoyed seeing her on stage. And then we have the role of Fatty the bookkeeper, sung by Jonathan Winell. Now, Jonathan Winell is really well known for singing a lot of lyric tenor roles, and in fact, I also saw him perform at the Magic Flute, which was like a year ago. And the thing about Fatty the bookkeeper is that this role is usually sung by either a lyric tenor, a spinto tenor, or even that of a character tenor. And Jonathan Winnell basically gave such a very great performance, almost really reminiscent of the likes of Anton der Mota, Nikolai Gedda, and Fritz Wunderlich. He has a certain Mozartian timbre to his voice, but not really like a white timbre, but it's a full lyric timbre that is just so gorgeous and so well toned, and it has such a golden tone to it. It is just simply put one of the best tenor voices I've ever heard, and I could really see this gentleman having such a huge career ahead of him. And this is definitely a great instrument that he has used well to his advantage. Then we have the role of Trinity Moses, sung by Tobias Schabel. Now, Trinity Moses is usually sung by a bass baritone or even that of a character bass. And the last time I saw Tobias Schabel was with him performing in the role of Don Basilio in Barber of Seville. And here he was giving such a very solid performance as Trinity Moses with a very solid technique to his voice and also a very good stage presence. And then we get to the likes of the following men. Then we have Jim Mahoney, sung by Stephan Rugamer. Now, Jim Mahoney is usually sung by a Heldentenor or even that of a Spinto tenor. Usually like a heftier tenor singing this role a la John Vickers, Richard Castley, Ramon Vinay, or Mario del Monaco, any of those heftier voices. But even though Stephan Rugamer, his portrayal of Jim Mahoney is far from my ideal voice of this role, I definitely enjoyed listening to him. It was a lot of fun just watching him on stage, and especially when he goes drunk without going way too over the top with it, which was really great. And his voice really helped. There were no signs of trouble, and it was a very lustrous instrument. In fact, I also saw Mr. Rugamer as Tamino from Zauberflöte like a couple of years ago. And he still gives it his all in terms of a very fine singing quality and a very captivating stage presence. But it's all thanks to his really solid technique in terms of his voice, and it's a very, very well-rounded type of voice. And he's also really well known for not only performing the lyric tenor repertoire, but also venturing into the spinto and character tenor repertoire. So he was really, really solid in this part. Even though I do expect a heftier voice, but that's just nitpicking. He's still great in his own standards. Then we have Jack O'Brien and Toby Higgins, sung by Florian Hoffmann. Now, Jack O'Brien is usually sung by a Jugendlicher Heldentenor or Spinto tenor, or even that of a full lyric tenor. And with Toby Higgins, he's usually sung by a light lyric tenor. And Florian Hoffmann really gave it his all in both of these roles. And it's all helped with his secure sounding voice that he used really well. He didn't go over the top, and he didn't act all really hammy, but instead he really he really like underacted his part, which was really good, and managed to have a secure technique in terms of his voice. Then we have Bill, who was sung by Artu Kataya. Now, Bill is usually sung by a lyric baritone or even that of a dramatic baritone. And Artu Kataya has a very gorgeous sounding baritone voice. It is just so luscious to listen to, and his portrayal of Bill was just absolutely flawless. And he really manages to get that virility and that type of, well, youthfulness in terms of this role. And he was absolutely solid in this role. And then we have Alaska Wolf Joe, sung by Grigory Shkarupa. Alaska Wolf Joe is usually sung by either a character bass or even that of a basso cantante. And Grigory Shkarupa as Alaska Wolf Joe was absolutely amazing. He has a very round timbre to his voice. He still has that round timbre. And not to mention, this is the third time that I've seen him on stage. The first one that I saw him as one of the armed men from Magic Flute. The second was when I saw him as Moza from Imas Ladieri. And this time it was as Alaska Wolf Joe. So kudos to you for giving such a very solid performance. And then we get to Evelin Novak as Jenny, one of the prostitutes. Now, Jenny is usually sung by either a character soprano or even that of a spinto soprano or a full lyric soprano. Usually I do like it when a like any singer of Jenny Hill usually specializes in either Salome or Gutruna or any of those spinto soprano roles or even dramatic soprano roles. But I would have to say that Miss Novak gave one of her finest performances in this role. She had such a lush timbre to her voice, and her stage presence was both sweet and very magnetic. Since, after all, Jenny is in her 20s, and she really portrayed that girlish nature really well without going too girly. And it's really helped by that secure technique and her very lyrical sounding and very gorgeous sounding voice. And I could really see a huge future for the likes of Winell, Novak, and many of the young artists here, especially that of Jonathan Winell and Evelin Novak. These two young artists, and also Grigory Shkarupa, these artists really have such secure techniques to their voices, and I really cannot wait to see them in bigger projects in the near future. So overall, the singing is absolutely well casted, and it was just well sung throughout the evening with no flaws whatsoever, and I really enjoyed every single performance that was given. And the conducting done by Wayne Marshall was solid overall. So overall, this was definitely a very exciting evening for me. Not only did I enjoy this opera, but I had the huge pleasure of meeting Evelin Novak and Stephan Rugamer. So to Evelin Novak and Stephan Rugamer and to the other people who started in this production of Aufstieg und Fall der Stadt Mahagonny, thanks for a wonderful evening. I definitely enjoyed all of your performances, and I hope to see you in a lot more projects in the near future. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in to my next review, which is, I don't know. I don't really have any upcoming reviews for the month of February because I'm really busy, basically. And let's just say that real life has basically come back to me, so I might be on a hiatus. But it depends, though, since this month I've been in kind of a hiatus. I've been very busy with school and very busy with other projects, so I don't know if there's going to be a new review. But still, stay tuned, stay subscribed, and until then,